Welcome to Dreamy Tales, where soothing stories guide you into a peaceful night's sleep. Enjoy imaginative bedtime stories that take you on a journey to the land of dreams, accompanied by relaxing background sounds to help you unwind and drift off easily. Perfect for both children and adults, Dreamy Tales is your ideal companion to relax, wind down, and enjoy tranquil moments. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and share it with others. Tune in, relax, and let your mind wander into a world of calm and serenity with us. The biting wind of Frostveil Peak whipped through the jagged rocks and snow-laden trees, carrying with it the ghostly howl of an oncoming storm. Skaldar moved silently, his paws sinking into the deep snow with each step, leaving behind a trail of barely visible tracks. His fur, white as the frost that clung to the frozen trees, blended seamlessly into the icy landscape. The world around him was eerily quiet, save for the distant roar of the wind and the occasional crack of ice shifting under the pressure of winter's grip. Though this was a desolate place, it was home for Skaldar. Born among the peaks and valleys of Frostveil, he had learned to survive the bitter cold and treacherous terrain. But his existence wasn't just about survival, it was about waiting. Waiting for the moment when he would finally understand why he, the last of the Frostwolves, had been left alone in these frozen mountains. The Frostwolves were once legends, revered as the guardians of the northern lands. They had the ability to control the elements, snow, ice, and wind, and were deeply connected to the spirits of the mountain. But that was a long time ago, before the wars, before the dark magic that had wiped out his kin. Skaldar, a descendant of those noble wolves, had inherited their physical strength and resilience but had never been able to tap into their ancient magic. And so, he wandered the mountains, carrying the burden of his lineage like a cloak of snow, heavy and cold. The wind shifted suddenly, bringing with it a scent that made Skaldar stop in his tracks. It was faint, almost indistinguishable from the cold air, but unmistakable to his keen senses. Something was wrong. The smell of decay, of something ancient and rotten, drifted on the wind. His fur bristled as he scanned the horizon, his amber eyes narrowing. Something was coming. The silent threat. Skaldar's instincts kicked in. He turned his gaze upward, toward the darkening sky, where thick clouds were gathering. They swirled unnaturally, as though summoned by a force far more powerful than a mere storm. He had seen storms before, blizzards that could bury entire valleys in snow, but this was different. This was something far more sinister. As the wind picked up, carrying with it the first flurries of snow, Skaldar's heart began to race. He felt the presence of something watching him, lurking just beyond the veil of the storm. His ears twitched as he caught the faint sound of wings, massive wings, cutting through the wind like blades. Suddenly, a shadow passed overhead, dark and foreboding. Skaldar's eyes snapped upward just in time to catch a glimpse of it, a creature, black as night, flying low across the peak. It was unlike anything he had ever seen before, its form shifting and writhing as though it were made of smoke and shadow. Its wings stretched out like the claws of death, and its eyes, glowing with an eerie blue light, seemed to pierce straight through him. Skaldar's breath caught in his throat. He had heard the stories, the old legends whispered by the wind, of a creature known as the Frost Wraith, a being of dark magic that had once sought to claim the northern lands as its own. The Frostwolves had fought it, driving it back into the void from which it came, but they had paid a heavy price. The battle had weakened them, and in the years that followed, they had been all but wiped out. Now, it seemed, the Frost Wraith had returned. Skaldar's paws dug into the snow as he prepared to flee, but something held him in place. This was no ordinary threat, this was the very force that had destroyed his kin. If he ran now, there would be no one left to stop it. The world below would freeze over, and the balance of the north would be shattered forever. He couldn't allow that to happen. The journey begins. Determined to learn more, Skaldar turned and sprinted up the mountain toward the sacred peak known as the Icehorn, where the ancient Frostwolves had once communed with the spirits of the land. It was said that those who could connect with the mountain spirit would gain the power to control the very forces of nature. If there was any hope of stopping the Frost Wraith, it would be there. The climb was treacherous, with jagged rocks and steep inclines made even more dangerous by the gathering storm. Skaldar's muscles ached, but he pressed on, driven by a sense of urgency that pulsed through his veins. He could feel the storm growing stronger, the wind howling like a wild beast as it tore through the narrow passes. Snow fell in thick sheets, obscuring his vision, but Skaldar moved forward with purpose. He had no choice. Time was running out. At last, after what felt like hours of climbing, Skaldar reached the summit of Icehorn Peak. The sacred ground was marked by towering spires of ice, their surfaces glowing faintly in the dim light of the storm. The wind was deafening here, howling through the frozen pillars like the cries of lost souls. Skaldar stood at the edge of the precipice, his breath coming in heavy puffs as he gazed out over the vast expanse of snow-covered mountains. He had made it. But as he stood there, the ground beneath him began to tremble. The storm intensified, and from the swirling snow, the Frost Wraith appeared, its massive form descending from the clouds like a living nightmare. It landed with a crash, shaking the mountain and sending a wave of ice and snow cascading down the slopes. Its eyes, glowing with dark magic, locked onto Skaldar. The wraith let out a bone-chilling roar, its voice like the sound of ice cracking beneath the weight of a glacier. Skaldar's heart raced. He had no magic, no power to fight this creature. How could he possibly defeat it? As the wraith advanced, Skaldar's mind raced. There had to be a way, something his ancestors had done to banish the creature before. But the stories were vague, and he had no one to guide him. Suddenly, a voice echoed in his mind, soft but clear. "You are not alone, Skaldar. The power of the Frostwolves flows through you. Trust in the mountain. Trust in the spirits." Skaldar's eyes widened. The voice was ancient, familiar. It was the voice of his ancestors. The awakening. Skaldar closed his eyes, focusing on the cold beneath his paws, the wind that whipped through his fur, the snow that fell around him. He could feel the mountain's heartbeat, slow and steady, like a giant slumbering beneath the ice. The spirits of the Frostwolves were with him. He could sense them now, their presence a comforting warmth in the cold. With a deep breath, Skaldar raised his head to the sky and let out a long, mournful howl, a howl that echoed through the mountains, carried on the wind like a song of old. As his voice rose, the snow around him began to stir, swirling in intricate patterns. The wind shifted, responding to his call, and the air crackled with energy. The Frost Wraith paused, its glowing eyes narrowing. It could feel the change, the awakening of the ancient power that had once driven it back. But it would not be deterred. With a roar, it lunged at Skaldar, its massive claws cutting through the air. But Skaldar was ready. Drawing upon the magic of the Frostwolves, he summoned a gust of wind that deflected the Wraith's attack, sending the creature reeling backward. The snow around him rose into the air, forming a barrier of ice and frost that shimmered with the light of the mountain spirit. Skaldar could feel the power surging through him, the dormant magic of his ancestors finally awakening. His fur bristled with energy, his eyes glowing with the same pale blue light that had once marked the Frostwolves as the guardians of the north. He was no longer alone, his ancestors were with him, their strength flowing through his veins. With a fierce growl, Skaldar leapt at the Frost Wraith, his movements swift and precise. The creature roared in fury, lashing out with tendrils of dark magic, but Skaldar dodged them with ease. He could feel the mountain guiding him, the spirits whispering in his ear, telling him where to strike, when to move. The battle raged on, the storm growing ever more intense. The sky was a swirling mass of dark clouds, illuminated by flashes of lightning and the pale glow of the moon. The Frost Wraith, though powerful, was no match for the combined might of Skaldar and the mountain. With each strike, the Wraith weakened, its form flickering like a dying flame. At last, with one final howl, Skaldar summoned the full force of the mountain. The snow swirled around him, forming a massive whirlwind that engulfed the Wraith. The creature screeched in fury as the frost magic tore through its dark form, breaking it apart piece by piece. And then, with a final roar, the Wraith was gone, its dark essence scattered to the winds. The storm began to die down, the snow settling gently around Skaldar. He stood tall, his chest heaving with exhaustion, but his heart filled with pride. The Frostwolves had once again saved the northern lands, and their legacy would live on. As the sun broke through the clouds, casting a soft glow over the frozen landscape, Skaldar looked out over the valley below. The world was safe, for now. But he knew that his journey was far from over. There were other threats lurking in the shadows, and the power of the Frostwolves was needed now more than ever. With a final glance at the sacred peak of Icehorn, Skaldar turned and began his descent, his heart filled with hope. He was not just the last of the Frostwolves, he was their future.